Okay, welcome to our new episode of our podcast. And today in our studio, we have Al Brown, Andrew Wood, and Mario Kirikides here. And we are going to talk about many things. This is Immaculate Conversations. Al Brown, take over.
Thank you very much, Sarab. Today's podcast is going to be on a subject that is fairly well known to everyone, which is the pandemic. And we're going to discuss the future of the pandemic, where we go from here. In our last episode, we discussed how it impacted us. And now we want to see what will it do in future. All pandemics in the past have had dramatic effects on human society. The ones we can remember, the Black Death in the Middle Ages and the Spanish flu 100 years ago, had dramatic impacts on society. In case of the Black Death, aside from killing off about a third of the population of Europe alone, it also caused some other impacts. For example, in Great Britain, England, it caused the decline of French in the towns and the cities, and the rise of English as the language of the realm, and as we know of it today. A later episode of that pandemic, which came in the 1600s, also led Sir Isaac Newton to spend his summer in the countryside, at which time he invented calculus, theorized gravity, and experimented with light. And now he's one of the most famous scientists in the world. Just imagine what would have happened if that pandemic hadn't happened. Today's pandemic is causing shocks around the world. And it's going to have lasting impacts, whether we like it or not. For this podcast, we're going to talk, and a second episode, we're going to talk about the impacts in 5 areas. The first is consumer behavior. The second is employment and work and business activities. A third is geopolitics and international trade. A fourth is going to be health and wellness. And a fifth is education. Now we're going to start talking about these in reverse order, with Andrew speaking first about the issue of education. Andrew, take it away.
Okay, well, thanks, Al, and hello, everyone. I'm pleased to speak on this topic. I'm a teacher of long standing. I retired just in time, I guess. I retired in the summer of 2019, a year ago. Today is July 29, 2020. And I'll tell you, it was just the right time, because the school boards have been turned upside down by the challenges presented by this COVID-19, by the pandemic. Here in Toronto, where I'm speaking from, the schools were closed first at March break, 2 weeks. And then, of course, it was extended for months, and the kids never did get back to school. Now, the issue is, of course, how are they going to learn otherwise? They tried the online learning, but I've talked to my colleagues and some students as well, and it's not that easy, you know. Even the older students, the intermediate students, and the high schoolers, attendance was poor. Participation was poor. Many kids, even a majority, wouldn't bother logging in. Others might, turn off their cameras and just sit it out. So it very, very difficult. Now, let me add to that, though, that I have been working nonstop since that time for a private school, small private school with a Chinese Canadian clientele. And it has kept me more than busy. I've never been busier in my career as a teacher. In fact, I'm exhausted by it. I have 4, even 5 classes a day, every day. And that is working out. For the most part, it's working out well. But, you know, the students who are more intelligent are engaged and are able to do the work. And the students who are going to struggle in the actual class, either they're less engaged or the work is difficult for them, it's very, very difficult for them to get what they need from the teacher or remotely, you know. So as a long-term solution for the majority of students, I think that's problematic. That's been my observation. And I've been dealing with small classes, generally less than 12 or so. And of course, with bigger classes, that would become even worse. As we sit here in July, I've got to I've got to say that this is a crucial turning point in the month coming up, because the whole continent, not to mention the world, I guess, in many ways, has to decide what paradigm we're going to use for education coming up in just a few short weeks. The clock is ticking. What are they going to do? Are they going to do online classes, the ones I've just been describing from my school? Are they going to go back into the buildings? Some combination of the two? They don't know. Nobody knows what the right answer is. Any concentration of people in a building is inevitably going to lead to a rise of cases. I mean, it's just, this is unprecedented in modern times. And so, as I started by saying, I'm glad I don't have to deal right now myself with some of those permutations and combinations. Anyway, I do wish them good luck. And it is so crucial. Don't think of education as merely education, folks. That's not. It's parents being released to work during the day. It's society being able to function, the way it normally does, with the moms and the dads at home, and and all that uncertainty. That's tough. So education is central. It's critical. It's crucial. Um, we've lost Mr. Brown, and I'm just
No, that's
winding
no
up what it is
problem.
I wanted to say.
Yeah,
Mm.
Andrew, but what is your position on this? Do you think the classes will open up? What are the risks involved?
I would bet, and it's only a bet, who the hell knows? I would bet
Because
that they'll try to start it up with the students in the classrooms, but I would not be at all certain that that's going to work in in practice. I see schools shutting down. They have one or two COVID cases in a school, the whole school's going to shut down, right?
You see
Because,
like a more of a hybrid format happening where partially virtual, partially being
well, yeah, a hybrid solution might be an idea. Look, Mario, if you're talking about the little kids, and those are the kids I was teaching for years, the kindergartners, grade 1, 2, 3, they can't learn online. Who's getting who here? I mean, give me a break. They need to be in the classroom. They need to be in front of the teacher. The teacher's a substitute parent. And,
Andrew, if I may interrupt,
yeah,
let's go on to the next subject
sure.
of this podcast, which is the health and wellness. And Sarab, you were going to tell us something on that score.
well, welcome to all the listeners, but I've been telling you this pandemic is making us stay inside, changing our lifestyles. We eat improperly, or we're not going out, we're not having exercise. So I'm saying this is the time to make sure your vitality is up. The only way to do that is to make sure you eat plant-based diets. You have to do some breathing exercises, stretching exercises, and generally you have to see this whole exercise that this is going to pass, but you are going to improve your vitality nonetheless. Even if there was no COVID, you had to do it, but this is the right time to do it. And there are simple exercises like breathing, for instance. Now, we know that we breathe from the time we are born to the time we die. These are involuntary muscles. But are we doing it properly? Can we enhance our breathing pattern in such a way that we get the maximum benefit? And the main reason for breathing properly is when you breathe properly, you have more oxygenation. You have more blood flowing through your body. Your cells are regenerating in a better fashion. And these are small exercises which we can put into our lifestyle. We can change our pattern of eating from heavy duty food because we're not doing exercises anyway. All these meats and heavy duty cheeses, this is bad for your system. it takes longer because digestive system also is trying to digest the food, and all the blood is going there along the intestine. There's so much of blood along the intestine. You're wasting your resources on something which will not digest properly, because most of the heavy duty foods, and they don't digest properly anyway, 30% come out as it is. So you're wasting resources, and secondly, you're making your body work harder. So having to, in this respect, diet changes is very important during this time, and also your breathing exercises, pranayam, we must start doing that. And this is not only for us, everybody, children, old people, especially old people, because when you do this, you enhance your lifespan, you will increase your lifespan. That is because every day you'll be a little more healthy. So that's the byproduct, is increased lifespan. So I have a series of exercises which I want to say in a different podcast just for the exercises, um, which we should include in our daily routine, and also meditation. Again, meditation is nothing else but deep sleep. Deep sleep is the time when your body regenerates, and in this stressful times, we're having sleep problems also. So if you can ensure that you're increasing your deep sleep by whatever it means, meditation is one of them, eating right is one of them. Anytime you increase your deep sleep, you're adding that to your lifespan, because that's the time your body heals and regenerates cells, when you're at deep sleep. So I have an Apple Watch, and I keep watching my deep sleep pattern, and I'm quite happy with that. And if you only do certain things, you can increase your deep sleep. And many people have sleeping problems. But that's all fine. But these things have to be done. We have to actually do these changes to get the benefit. And this is the best time, because we are cooped up and nothing is changing. The lifestyle has changed. The way we live has changed. We now take this opportunity to bring it back into the better way, so that you don't get sick. You are not a strain on the basically, if your vitality is up,
Mr.
your
Rab, Andrew has a question.
Yeah, can I, yeah. Well, thank you, Saurabh, for this. I wanted to respond to something you said earlier, because I agree with you. Vitality is important, and my vitality, actually, to be frank, is not at a high ebb right now. It's low, but I find myself challenged to do what you're talking about in terms of the diet. For example, I find myself eating more meats and cheeses, like comfort food, and I'm not eating properly, and I have put on some weight, and it's difficult. I mean, you recommend these things, but gosh, when it comes down to where the rubber hits the road, it's tough to make the right decision every time.
yeah.
Gentlemen, I would like to move on this to Mario. Mario, can you tell us something about your impressions, particularly of the geopolitical situation and trade? And if you have anything to say about employment, please speak up on that as well.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, let me just say, when Sarah said no meat, it just killed me. You just got me right here, man. You can't do that to me. You can't take away my meat. Please don't. It is. It's great to be able to look at change, and we do definitely need change. One of the things that, from my perspective, for those of you who know me, I'm a professional speaker, I'm an entrepreneur, and I have been involved quite intensively in the mindset of looking at change, looking at the way we can bring more prosperity to ourselves, more through an altruistic perspective, looking at the geopolitical side of it as well, and seeing what's happening in the world. And COVID has offered us a perspective that I find very interesting. It is sort of like it's pulled back the curtains to what's been happening from a political side. And the reason why the curtains got pulled back is because many times the political debates of the day were always in the realm of politics. It always remained there. But now lives are at stake. And we're seeing that debate being transferred over to COVID. We're having discussions about masks. We're having discussions about figures, whether or not the death rate or the infection rate and all those things are actually what's happening. It's a global debate. We are getting, in this age of information, we're getting almost real-time feedback from all over the world of what's happening. And it can be a very, very scary thing, and it affects us emotionally. One of the things that, from a political perspective, that I've noticed is when it was in the political realm, when it was still in that discussion phase of politics, it didn't really matter that much to people because the debate remained there with issues that weren't really tangible. But like I said, it's now life or death. And what I mean by this is politicians and the quote unquote gurus, and I use that euphemism in a little bit of a derogatory sense, have figured out that they don't win votes through issues. If you noticed, in any country, and if you look in the States, you look here in Canada, the actual issue matters very little because the votes don't come that way. Where the votes come towards the particular candidate is through an emotional manipulation, using words, using the emotionally charged aspect of it, of calling somebody a name. I was in the conversation recently with a political operative, a campaign manager, who was calling names, or actually calling the Prime Minister of Canada a child, and actually trying to call him a loser and disrespected all over the world and all those kind of things. And he was playing to the base. So those people that were listening to him were part of that base. And you could see the emotionally charged and the kind of agreement that he was getting from that. But when I challenged him on the emotional based words that he was using, he said to me, "Oh, okay, I will back off from that. You're right. I shouldn't be using that words. But what about the issues?" And when I asked him about the issues, he turned around and he said to me, "Nothing. Absolutely nothing." Because the intent for him was to get the emotion out there. This is why when you look at politics, you kind of think to yourself, well, why are things not happening? Why in the States, the Republicans, for example, have not come up with a health plan for the past 15 years? Why the Democrats are not more aggressive in their approach and all these kind of things. And here in Canada too, you do see that there is a lot of that, but it's the focus is very different.
Okay,
And
Mario, if I may interject here, well, you've given us all some fair food for thought, but I would like to leave further questions on that until we get to the other phase. I would like to speak to the impact of the pandemic on consumer behavior, because it is fairly important to our economy. It's a fairly significant impact. And once I've done that, then we'll open the floor for discussion on any subject that people would like. To begin with, everybody's behaviors have, over the last 3 months, changed quite significantly, at least for a short period of time. And now for some, they're going back. But some of those changes will probably stay. And the changes that have been triggered on us fall into, so it can be categorized in 3 ways that are actually rather interlinked. The first is our habits, the second is structural changes, and the third is in choices. In terms of habits, our worlds have been turned upside down. Even the morning routine of going into work and picking up your coffee on the way isn't the same. And our evening routines aren't the same either. Everything has changed. Structurally speaking, those things that we are able to keep doing, such as shopping and such, well, we've got to do that differently. We've got to line up for everything if we want to do it the way we used to. The majority of people have the habit of going shopping, say on Saturdays or Fridays, but if you do that, you're standing in line. If you go on, say, a Monday morning, there's no lineup. we've got to change our behaviors. But on top of all of that, the choices are disappearing as well. There are a lot of retail outlets that simply haven't opened yet, small businesses that are just going out of business, and other personal service groups that are still waiting to open up, and many will not. And one study I read said that maybe as much as 40% of all small businesses probably won't reopen. The impact that we've seen so far in terms of consumer behavior can be summed up further in three items. Firstly, there has been substantial reduction in consumer spending or discretionary spending. And for the upper third of society, upper third or half of incomes, it's been a reduction of about 10%. More people, I can say, for the benefit, are getting out and doing other things besides going to gyms. Like in my neighborhood, the streets are filled with people now out walking. Now, hopefully getting over those heavy diets that you say, Sarab, everybody is eating. And there's been an enormous increase in online shopping. I'm actually right now expecting to receive a headphone microphone set from Staples being delivered to me rather than picking it up in the store because I couldn't buy it there. But I had to go online to buy it. From what I can see, the outlook of the pandemic is such that if it persists for another 6 months to a year, and it looks like we're not going to have a viable vaccine for that long that can be mass produced and mass delivered, there are going to be a lot of behavioral changes in people. It's often been said that if you practice a new habit for 2 or 3 months, it becomes, practice a new activity for a few months, it becomes a habit. Well, we're in the process of practicing a lot of new habits, a lot of new activities that are going to become habits when this pandemic passes. Even our vacation habits of going outside of the country in the winter are likely to change. More to say on that, but I'd like to sum it up there, and then we'll open the floor up to various and sundry questions. Gentlemen, carry on.
Oh, you're muted, Sarab.
Yeah, I have an observation here. Recently, it's related to COVID, of course. There was a stock called Kodak. There's a company called Kodak, Eastman Kodak. Remember the ones who made pictures and all that?
Yeah.
They of course went bankrupt, and then they came up. Now recently they got a $736 million loan from the US government to produce COVID related medicine, like it's called remdesivir or something. Some by the bulk
Remdesivir.
Remdesivir. And this stock went from $2 to $40 in one day. You know, of course, I made a little money there. I made about 8,000. I sold a little early, but just see how important this, because they are producing the bulk, and then they'll give that to, under the Department of Defense. It's the Trump's idea. So this, we are very close to a vaccine, no doubt. But see the economic impact. How the governments give so many trillions of dollars just to keep the economy impetus to keep the economy stable, and now this is how it's coming back. Now you're going to see the value coming back, and when the vaccine comes, maybe the economy comes back also.
Well, first of all, Sarah, let me say, Sarah, first of all, shame on you for not including your friends in that tip with Kodak. He makes all the money, and we're sitting here talking with him.
No, it's not that I was in meditation. I just said, let me see. When I saw Kodak, it had gone up $7. I said, $7, is there a mistake? Immediately stopped my meditation and sold my stock.
You should have texted us, man. That would have helped a lot. But let me answer your question.
Today
went up $20 more. I had already sold it, so I'm not part of that.
I'm just joking with you, but let me answer your question, because you are hitting on a very important point here, and that is that repurposing industry. Okay, here we are. We have a photographic company that was doing photographs. They went bankrupt, or doing cameras and film and all that kind of stuff. They went out of business and then they came back repurposed. Many people look at current industry and they say very stoically many times, I will not, you know what, if this company goes under, then we've had it, right? But yet there are so many ways you can repurpose something, right? In climate change, we're talking about coal, we're talking about clean energy sources. And a lot of people say, no, I want to hold on to this because this is where my livelihood is, or this is what the company used to do. And you look at World War II, for example, where manufacturers that were doing cars and all stuff turned around all of a sudden and were creating weaponry for airplanes and machine guns and whatever. Why can't we do the reverse? Why can't we repurpose for people's health and well-being for the good of humanity, as opposed to trying to figure out which way we can kill each other better? And that is part of the geopolitical debate that should happen.
Andrew?
Well, human nature there, Mario. Human nature, I'm afraid, is against you. The billions and the untold billions that are spent on armaments and weapons. You don't think those are ever going to be used? America has turned itself into an armed camp. Everybody's got a gun. If you got a gun, sooner or later you're going to use it. And it's interesting that you should say that, but there's no reason to be optimistic in the long run, really.
Well, this is
gentlemen, I'd like to expand on the observation with business. The governments are throwing lots of money at businesses to prop up the economy. Canada, the US, the whole world. Last week, Europe approved a 1.8 trillion budget for the specific purposes of propping up the economy. Where, Mario, do you think that these initiatives will lead the world in terms of business? I know it's a big question, but give us your some insights.
Let me put it to you this way. First of all, the one thing that I've noticed in my life experience is that, and I'm going back to Andrew's argument that it's human nature. That is the cry of basically the will of keeping things the way they were, and nothing changes. You know, if we claimed that it was human nature, nobody would have gone to the moon. Nobody would have we wouldn't have had this technological evolution. It's a lack of imagination. That is where the problem comes in. And I'm not saying about Andrew, I'm saying generally it's a lack of imagination. And it is extreme, and it's not, lofty thinking. It is extremely pragmatic at looking at where the world is going to be, because we're heading in the very wrong direction economically. We're heading in the wrong direction politically. We are heading in the wrong direction socially. And we're seeing it happen in front of our eyes. We've had already one economic debacle that happened in the late 1990s. In 2008. We're having one now. So yeah, catastrophic events can happen, and eventually we will come out of this in a very, very different way. So Al, it is a very broad question that you're asking. And I think we have to look at it in a much more closed micro sense in our communities and see how we can actually change things at the community-based level. And that is through a lot of it through education.
That leads to another question, and it has a lot to do with our preparedness for the pandemic that started. We found ourselves in March without enough personal protection equipment, PPE. And it had been the case that we were depending on foreign suppliers, primarily Chinese, to bring all these goods into our country. If our government were to decide that that we cannot rely on foreign sources for essential goods, one might argue that just about everything is essential, because just a simple face mask could save a life. Sector, Donald Trump said it was about 2-3 years ago when he started a trade war with Canada that it was, and the world, that it was steel. Where do we go with along this principle? How much should we say reject world trade in favor of local initiatives?
Well, I'd like to come in here. I want to ask a question to Mario, who is an American. Is Trump going to come back?
Well, I'm an American Canadian and a Greek, so it depends on which side you want to pull on.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a whole other question.
That is a whole other question, but as far as Al has said, to Al's question more specifically, you can't avoid globalization, guys.
No.
As much as we want to consider it, and it's not globalization that's the threat to jobs. It's, we're moving into a technological era where artificial intelligence is coming in, which is going to take a lot of the jobs that were once, blue collar, for example, out of the reality of people's everyday work. We're going to have to rethink a lot of different things here. Globalization is natural right now. You can't. It's a Pandora's box, a genie that has been released, and you can't turn it back. The America first, or the Canada first, or the Europe first, or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't work anymore. What happens is it closes you down, turns your economy into a cocoon, where others then are starting to prosper, and eventually you're going to be behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, Sarab,
Can I add something? Let me add something, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because we're talking about this thing. I want to put in my 2 cents here. A globalization is inevitable in many respects, but I think we need to realize that there are critical industries, critical areas of the economy which do need to be localized. And I'm thinking especially of our food production. I think any country that allows itself to become dependent on foreign sources for its basic food staples is playing a dangerous game. And there are other things too, as well. Culture. I mean, there's something you don't normally think about, but you need to have a very strong local, domestic cultural industry, or else the long-term prospect for your for the nation is in question. But there are others too. So it needs to be a mix. There are some things that can well be globalized and must be, and there are other things that you had better take care of doing at home.
Yep.
Gentlemen, let's stop this podcast here and take a short break, and then we'll finish with another 20 minutes of discussions.
Yeah, I think you're right, Al. We will discuss in the next episode about Donald Trump, about what is going to happen to the world and how we're going to improve ourselves.
You're not going to let go of Donald, are you?
That, we'll see you next.
Okay,
gentlemen, we'll take a 5-minute break and then we will carry on. How's that sound?
Can you pause the...
Yeah, I have stopped.